Okay, well, it is a little after 9, so I think we can go ahead and get started. So I will go ahead and start us off. So thank you for joining us tonight for our webinar series, Residency Real Talk with Dr. Samir Desai. As many of you know, my name is Alyssa Harlow, and I'm the Director of Marketing here at MD2B Connect. I'm sure that I've talked to many of you in some way, shape, or form, but for those who are just now seeing me, it's nice to meet you in person. We're very happy to have you guys here tonight. We're going to be going over the questions that you guys submitted during the webinar from your Google form that you guys were able to submit. Hopefully you were able to submit your questions if you had those. Please feel free to submit any questions that you have during the chat, during the webinar. If there's time at the end, then we'll try to answer those. And if not, we'll try to answer them in the next webinar if possible. As always, if you guys have any questions or concerns about anything, whether it's, for guidance or about your rotation, if you're currently rotating with us, anything about the match process, we welcome and encourage you guys to reach out to us. For anything, you can reach out to myself, Dan, Renee, Manish. Those are other members of our team who you've probably spoken with, as well as Dr. Desai. Please don't hesitate. We would be happy to help you, and we want the best for you, and we want you guys to succeed. Lastly, you'll likely see me sending various links and resources in the chat throughout the webinar. So please feel free to save those and to use those for later, as obviously those are used for your own time if you want to read through them for some additional information and resources. So with that said, I will go ahead and pass it over to you, Dr. Desai.
Okay, Alyssa, thank you so much. And I want to give a warm welcome to all of you. Thank you for joining us today on our Residency Real Talk webinar. We do this on a monthly basis so that we can keep you well informed of what's going on in the residency match world. It's very important to us at MD2B Connect that we support you through every step in this process. We get a tremendous amount of joy from hearing about your successes, and of course we love to hear your match success, and we want that for each and every one of you. And of course we try to support you in different ways. This webinar is one example of that, but we have a lot of other resources. All of you have received or will be receiving very soon 2 of our books. One is called The Successful Match, and the other one is called Success on the Wards. The Successful Match book is over 650 pages of detailed information on the residency application process, on how to match successfully, and it goes into tremendous detail on everything you would want to know, things like letters of recommendation, personal statements. It has over 150 plus pages of residency interviewing tips and strategies. And so that is something that I think you will all find very useful. And then Success on the Wards is a book that will help empower you to put your best foot forward in your rotations. So I think these are 2 very useful and informative resources, but that's not the only thing that we have available to you. We also have our websites, MD2B Connect, and our sister website, thesuccessfulmatch.com. On the latter website, which you may not have had a chance to visit yet, we have an extensive blog on different topics related to the residency match. These are articles that complement what you're going to be getting in the books. We're able to update our blog much faster than we can update our books. So they're very, very nice complements to the books that you'll be receiving. And we try to give you cutting edge, very, very high yield information, not the standard information that you will often hear, but very detailed information that will allow you to strengthen whatever component of the residency application that you are working on. So there's a lot. At that website, you can also access some Q&As with program directors, some videos that we've done, residency interview prepped resources. So there's a lot there, and we'll continue to share all that with you. And of course, during today's webinar, Alyssa will share some links to our many different resources. And then of course, we have a lot of one-on-one time with you. So some of you who've already been doing the rotation for a while, you have already had a chance to talk with me. But for those of you who have just started, I am really looking forward to meeting you. We'll be talking with you soon and diving deep into your specific situation. So it's an opportunity for me to get to know you, to give you very, very personalized guidance, and to make sure you feel comfortable just reaching out to me throughout this whole process. I really want to hear about how you're doing well after this rotation ends, because I want to make sure that you're on the right track to getting to where you want to be. So don't ever hesitate to reach out to me if you need to ask me any questions. So today, what we're going to do is talk about the things that are important in June 2024. We received a lot of questions from all of you. Many of those questions had to do with what should I be doing right now? And those are great questions, because in this process, you want to know what actions to be taking, and you want to make sure that you're not going to suffer from any inaction. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And then, of course, as we always do, we will answer your questions that you have submitted. So let me go ahead and share the screen. Okay, so Alyssa, do you see my screen?
Yes, I see it now. Go ahead, and you want to try to go to the next slide and make sure that that works.
Does that work?
Yep, looks all good.
Okay, great. So again, hearty welcome to all of you for our June 2024 webinar. I want to first talk about some important dates. These are things that we want to make sure we have on our calendar. Here we are, June 5th. So ERAS season is now officially opened for this application cycle. Soon enough, we're going to be having tokens that are released. And remember also in September, that's when some key dates to keep in mind. September 4th is when you can start submitting your application. September 25th is an important day, because that's the first day programs can start to review your application. September 16th is also notable. That's when you can register for the NRMP match. This is something important to do. You don't have to do it exactly on September 16th. In fact, you're not required to do it for applying to residency, but you must do it during the cycle at some point, because if you don't register for the NRMP, the programs cannot rank you. And every year, programs will tell you stories of applicants that went through the process, received an interview at their program, but when it was time to rank them, they could not locate the applicant because the applicant hadn't yet registered with the NRMP. So while you can wait until later in the season, I think makes a lot of sense to just take care of it in September. That way you have an NRMP ID number, and there's no issue with a program finding you later. Of course, if a program can't find you later, you would all understand that's not a good look for any of us to show to a program. So don't forget to register for the NRMP. A question that I get asked very often is there an advantage to turning in your application early in September? Do you get top consideration if you submit it early? And the answer is no, because all of the applications that are submitted before September 25th are received as a batch at the same time. So you will get top billing and consideration for your application if you submit before September 25th. The advantage to submitting earlier is that you get it off of your plate. Obviously, the whole application process is very intensive. There's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of things going on at the same time. If you feel like your application's in tip-top shape in the early part of September, everything is available and ready to go, you can submit. And then, of course, it can be a bit of a relief to having submitted it. But you don't want to submit early at the expense of the quality of the application. So the quality of the application is highly important for our chances of securing interviews. So if you need that time through the rest of the month, take that time, use it to your advantage. Remember, though, that as you get very close to September 25th, that's when the bulk of applicants are going to be submitting, and the site can really, really slow down. It has crashed on a few occasions in the past. And so I always tell people, try to get your application in. Hopefully you can get it in a week before the first day that they can review applications. So in this case, around September 18th or 19th. There are some other important dates that I want to share with you. These are dates that you'll find on the AAMC website. They are webinars that the AAMC is doing for your information. They are titled Optimizing Strategies for Your Residency Application. There is a general webinar on how to effectively utilize the ERAS system. That's in later this month, June 25th. And then there are specialty-specific webinars. You can see that one has already taken place in May, and that was for family medicine. If you did not attend that webinar, don't worry. You can access the recording. But there are other webinars that are upcoming in pediatrics and internal medicine, general surgery, and emergency medicine. So put these on the calendar, go to the AAMC website and register for those that are relevant to you. At these webinars, there's going to be a coordinator as well as a program director they're both going to be weighing in on relevant aspects of applying for that particular specialty. So well worth your time to attend those. I would recommend attending those live if you can, because there may be some things that come up that are time urgent that you will be able to take action on from the webinar information. Whereas if you waited a month or two to review that recording for the first time, you might lose out on some opportunities that they may present. So I think it's good to attend it. And if you can't attend it, at least view the recording within a few days of its release. Now, we received a number of questions about what Dr. Desai should I be working on. It's June 2024. So the top thing to work on, and a very important thing, is your research of residency programs. There's so much benefit and value that you will receive from quality research that you do. The sooner you get started on this, the better things are going to be. You'll have so much more information, and information is going to empower you to present your best self. Now, some of you are going to say, Dr. Desai, how do I do this? Because my specialty has over 500 residency programs, or mine has 250, or I'm going to be probably applying to 200-300, and I'm studying for my STEP exam, and I'm doing rotations, and I'm trying to put my residency application together. And believe me, it's a tough job. There's a lot going on in your lives right now. So absolutely, I understand that. The best way to make progress with researching programs is to do a little bit every day. So I'll tell you a story. When I joined the faculty at the Baylor College of Medicine 25 years ago, I had just finished my chief residency, and I was finding my way as a very, very junior faculty member. And there was a senior professor, a very distinguished academician who was very well regarded in infectious disease. And at the time, he had almost 200 publications. And these were publications in some major journals, very prestigious journals. And he was an infectious disease physician. So if you've spent time with an infectious disease physician, you'll know that their consult services are very busy. So at our hospital, for example, they have some of the highest census, patient census, among our subspecialty consult services. And so they also see patients in their clinics. And so my question to him was, how do you get all this done? How do you see all these patients in the hospital, manage your clinic patients? How do you teach the residents and fellows? And how do you take care of your administrative work, your research, and somehow manage to accrue 200 publications? And what he said to me was, Samir, two things that I do. Number one, I schedule myself very, very well. And when I asked him what he meant by that, he keeps a calendar, and every day in that daily calendar, he is highly scheduled. And so he puts in the things that he needs to do. So with his publications, for example, he blocks off the hour of 7 to 8 every morning before clinic starts, before his resident starts seeing patients on the consult service. And that from 7 to 8, he doesn't take any calls. He doesn't look at any emails. All he does is he works on his publications. And he's able to do a little bit every day. And just keeping up with that type of schedule has allowed him to be very productive, really very prolific, despite tremendous demands on his time because of all of his other activities. So he schedules this. Okay, and he's very diligent, very disciplined. So if you all are in the habit of keeping a calendar and schedule, take a look at your calendar and schedule and ask yourself, how can I optimize this in a way that I can do all the things that I need to do? Because you're at a point in your life where there's a lot going on, but your calendar, your schedule will allow you to make progress, especially if you make a little bit of time for some of these other things. You will make a lot of headway. So if you carve out an hour, and maybe you don't have an hour, maybe let's say you carve out 30 minutes every day to just research programs, by the time we get to September, you will have a tremendous amount of information. Now, how will this researching of programs help you? Why is this so important? And why is this important to do yourself? Because after all, you could potentially get a lot of this information, right, by using other services. So why this is important and why you need to do as much as you can, I want to tell you. So first, a lot of your application strategy comes from the knowledge that you acquire from your research. So one of the things you're trying to do is trying to determine which programs to apply to. If you don't do this research well, to identify programs that have criteria that fit well with your profile, then you could very much easily apply to many more programs than you need to. And of course, that comes with a lot of expense. So researching programs very, very well can help you cut down on costs. Now, another reason why it's important to research programs is you can do program-specific activities. So for example, if you want to, you could write a program-specific personal statement. The system allows you to write as many personal statements as you want. And then you can assign those statements as you see fit for the different programs. So if you feel like you want to target a particular program, one way to express that interest is by writing a program-specific personal statement. We'll talk a little bit more about personal statements in next month's webinar, but that's an example of how your research can allow you to do that, because when you're researching the program, you find the details about the program that show fit between you and the program. And you're able to sort of express that in different ways, one of which is the program-specific personal statement. Acquiring information about the program also allows you to do some networking, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. If you want to connect with somebody who knows something about the program, whether it's a resident, whether it's a faculty member, or any other personnel attached to the program, the more you know about the program, the better the conversation you'll have with that person who has that tie to that program. So that's another way that the research helps you. Another benefit for doing research is many applicants will send letters of interest after they apply in September. And so these letters will be sent typically in October, usually before programs begin extending interviews. And the hope is by sending this letter or email of interest, that a program will take a closer look at your application, and their appreciation of your interest in the program will result in a greater chance of you getting an interview. So those letters of interest are very common. So at our program, the Baylor College of Medicine, we get a lot of those letters of interest. The majority of those letters of interest are what we call generic. It looks like that email could have been sent to any one of 600 plus internal medicine programs. So when we get something like that, it doesn't make that much of an impression. However, when there's a well-crafted email, which shows sincere interest, a very clear fit between the applicant and our program, that's going to be more noticed by our program. And so your researcher programs would allow you to create that type of letter of interest. Now, as you're doing your research, you can see that this can be a bit of a big job. This is why breaking it up into smaller chunks is good, because if you are thinking, okay, I'm studying for my STEP exam, I'm doing some US clinical experience, and that's all going to end in late August, and then I'm going to start researching programs, you're robbing yourself of some of the time that you could have put into it, right? And I'm not saying you need to spend 4 or 5 hours right now, especially if you've got a lot going on, but a little bit of time will allow you to make a lot of progress. In addition, as you're researching programs, you will find opportunities that programs extend to applicants. For example, with more and more programs being present on social media, whether it's Instagram or Facebook or Twitter or what have you, if you follow them, they will introduce you to some things that are going on in their program. They might invite you to attend a conference. They could inform you of a Q&A that's happening with some program personnel. There may be a meet and greet with residents, and these are things that can be occurring during the summer. So the only way you would know about these things is if you're doing research on these programs. So there's a lot there, and you can make this whole process much more manageable for yourself and not lose out on opportunities if you do a little bit every day. By the time you get to September, it'll be amazing how much you've been able to accomplish. So please do think about some of those strategies. Now, it's June 2024. We don't have to turn in our residency application until September, but we can work on our residency application. On the AAMC website, in the ARAS section, there is a ARAS worksheet. So it is placed there so that you can start to work on your application. You can get familiar with it. You can see what information they're looking for. One of the most challenging parts of the application are the ARAS descriptions. So you have the opportunity to list your experiences. There's a limit of 10 experiences. And for each experience that you list, you have a description field. There's a character limit to that description field. And there's an opportunity to identify 3 of the 10 experiences as your most meaningful experiences. Those that you identify as your most meaningful experiences, you will be allowed to enter information into a second description field to explain why that particular experience is most meaningful to you. So those descriptions have to be carefully crafted. They are one of the top things that a program is going to look at when they're reviewing your ARAS application. So every precious word in those descriptions needs to be carefully considered so that you're putting your best foot forward. So you can start working on those things now because that also is a big job. You can do a little bit every so often. So by the time you get to September, you have benefited from your previous work. Letters of recommendation. This is an integral part of the application. Currently, letters of recommendation are the second most important factor that residency programs use to make interview decisions. Now, of course, to secure a strong letter of recommendation, you have to do pretty much what I had to do when I was a medical student, which is put my best foot forward in my rotation and really approach my rotations, with this attitude of unlocking the full learning potential, being hungry to learn, being a great team player, all these qualities and characteristics that residency programs want in their future residents. This is our opportunity to show it now during the rotation so that the letter writer, your professor, your preceptor can include that information in your letter. So first step, of course, is to perform to the best of your capability. And then you have to ask for that letter of recommendation. So in the red book that you're receiving, that called The Successful Match, there's a very extensive chapter on letters of recommendation. It goes into tremendous depth about what programs are looking for in letters and how applicants can approach each process of the letter writing process, meaning everything from how to ask for a letter with the proper etiquette to how to work with the letter writer to collaborate on the production of a meaningful letter that will be sent to the program. So in terms of asking for letters, we recommend that rotators ask for letters in the final week of the rotation and then become familiar with the mechanics of getting these letters of recommendation uploaded into the ERAS system. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that once these letters are uploaded, there is some processing time that the ECFMG has. That processing time varies. It could be as quick as a day or two. Sometimes it's been even faster than that. But as we get closer to September 25th, the volume of letters that are being uploaded is very, very high. So things tend to slow down. So I tell people, get everything you need squared away with your letters as early as possible so that they're in the system and uploaded. I would recommend no later than September 10th. Now, that doesn't mean if you upload a letter after September 10th that it won't be available by September 25th, but I have seen some lag times in past cycles as much as 2 weeks, especially as we get into September. So to be on the safe side, try to get it done by September 10th. That means being in contact with your preceptors and letting them know what these timelines are. The preceptors are going to be very supportive. They're going to want to meet your needs. They know that this is an important part of your application, but our job is to keep them informed about the process, the timeline, so that they can meet our needs. Now, remember, we have to give the preceptors a certain amount of time. Typically in the US, we give our preceptors 3 to 4 weeks after a rotation ends to get their job done. Now, for those of you who are rotating well into the summer, you may be a little bit nervous about whether your letters could be done on time. And in our program, we've talked to a lot of our preceptors about students who are doing rotations later in the summer. And we want them to consider getting the letters done earlier so that they can be available in the system. Okay, now we have to balance the request for that letter with where you are in the rotation, right? So you want to really ideally ask for that letter a little bit later in the rotation when you've really excelled, because remember, at the beginning of a rotation, you're not yet at your peak level. But later in the rotation, of course, once you understand how the rotation is structured, what your expectations and responsibilities are, and you're really in a groove, that's when your performance is at its highest. And so it's always best to ask for a letter at that time. And as your relationship deepens over the course of your rotation, you can have conversations with the attending about, your letter and, whether it can be written a little bit faster if you happen to be doing a rotation later in the summer. Now, if you have any questions about that as it relates to our rotations or to any other rotations you're doing, you can ask me and I'll give you some guidance on how to possibly speed up the process, because I know how important these letters are for your future. Now, when you work with your preceptors, you have to collaborate with them. So at my medical college, the Baylor College of Medicine, when I have medical students rotating with me, sometimes they rotate with me 1 year before they're going to apply for residency. And so they don't need the letter at that moment in time. And so what I do is I tell them, whether you need it 2 weeks from now or you need it 1 year from now, we have to keep records of our rotation experience. And so I tell them, keep a daily log of what you've been doing, the patients you've seen, the skills you've developed, the qualities you've refined. If you showed that you were a team player in a very, very specific way, let's say that the clinic was shorthanded and an MA was out because he was sick, maybe you stepped in and went above and beyond because you did 3 different jobs that day. And because of that, you were instrumental in making sure that day went smoothly when the team was shorthanded. That's a very specific example of teamwork. And that's an example of something you should be recording in your daily log. Because then when it's time to write the letter, of course, Dr. Smith is going to know that you're a team player. But if you provide Dr. Smith with a story of that particular day when things were very hairy in the clinic and you stepped up, now Dr. Smith's going to be able to incorporate that point into the letter to back up the praise related to the teamwork. So you have to be collaborative, and preceptors in our program are very receptive to that because they want to be invested in producing a meaningful letter for you. So with my students at Baylor, I'm collaborative, and our preceptors also want to be collaborative too. So keep a log of things you're doing so that you can supply them with the relevant information to produce that meaningful letter. Again, refer to the chapter on letters of recommendation in the Successful Matchbook. Now, you also have to coordinate with your medical school. There are some documents that you don't have full control over, right? Your MSPE, your transcript, if you're applying to internal medicine, you might need a chairman's letter, also now known as the IMSEL. These are things that require time. Schools may not be fully aware of exactly what they have to do and how they have to do it. So you have to work with your school to provide them the information to create these documents and to do so in a timely manner, because if you don't get them involved early enough, then it doesn't get done by the time it needs to get done. And then, of course, we can potentially suffer from that. So coordinate with your school to get it all done so that everything is available by September 25th. And then finally, networking, which we're going to save for a little bit later in today's conversation because we had a few questions related to that. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about researching programs, specifically the AAMC Residency Explorer. If you haven't visited this site, it's chock full of very useful information. So I highly recommend that everybody uses this and uses it intensively. Alyssa and I are very familiar with this. Before I talk about some new features for the AAMC Residency Explorer for this 2025 cycle, I wanted Alyssa, you want to just kind of jump in and weigh in a little bit about what you've noticed from your time that you've spent on the Residency Explorer website? Looks like we don't have Alyssa here, but she'll probably log back in. I think she's having a little technical difficulty, but let me tell you about Residency Explorer. So there is a lot of information there, a lot of program-specific information, and this is part of the research that you're doing to acquire the information you need to apply smartly. There are some additional information that is coming for this cycle. So there's what's called interview data, where you can look at how you measure up to applicants who have applied in the past to that program and have actually received interview invites. So that can be very, very useful information. You can also get information on program signals and geographic alignment. For those of you who are not familiar with program signals, for each specialty, you have a certain number of signals you can send to programs. For internal medicine, for example, this year you can send 15 signals. Last year you could send 7 signals, and each signal represents an indication of your deep interest in their program. And so now through the Residency Explorer website, you're going to be able to see what is the rate of interview invitation invites for applicants who use their program signal on that particular program or had geographic alignment at the program level. So that's very, very useful information. Not only can it help you decide which programs to apply to, but you can also use it to guide your signaling strategy. You can also look at how your profile compares to that particular program's profile. A lot of the changes that have occurred in the ERAS system as it relates to applying over the last few years have occurred because we're trying to see if there can be a more holistic review of applicants so that there's more of an emphasis on fit. So a personalized profile comparison allows you to see how you fit with the program. And since fit is very important to programs, it may also guide you to decision making on which programs to signal using the small number of signals that you have. So with regards to residency application, we often talk about the ERAS application, and it is true that most specialties do use ERAS, but not all specialties do. There's been some specialties that have become disillusioned with ERAS. Obstetrics and gynecology is a good example. They have moved, most of the programs in that field have moved past ERAS to use a different application system. Plastic surgery is another example. Ophthalmology for years and years has not been using ERAS. Now, in specialties, if you look at specialties and you say, okay, this is an ERAS participating specialty, note that there may be a few programs within ERAS participating specialties that don't use the ERAS application. So it's important to visit the ERAS participating specialties and programs page on the AAMC website as soon as you can, so that you can determine which programs in your specialty participate in ERAS. And in the event that some of those programs don't, then you can research how to apply to those programs and make sure that you meet their needs. You don't want to realize that in the middle of September. So if we talk about the non-ERAS participating specialties and programs, we said obstetrics and gynecology, they use Residency CAS. Ophthalmology uses CAS, or the Common Application Service. Plastic surgery has a central application. Even in ERAS participating specialties like anesthesiology, there are 14 programs that are using the central application as a supplemental application this year. There's a few programs in urology and one in neurology that are doing it. So I just put these as representative examples of how there can be exceptions to ERAS. What's new with ERAS? You've been able to put your hometown for years and years. Last year, you could list up to 5 hometowns. This year, you can't do as many. You can only list up to 3. So that's something that's different. Another thing that's new with ERAS is that the honors and awards section has expanded. I think that's really good for international medical graduates. I'm always impressed to see the types of honors and awards that IMGs have won over the years in different areas. But of course, in the US, we're not as familiar with those honors and awards. And so previously it was difficult to describe the significance of those awards, but now we can specify what category the honor and awards fall into, and we have more space to actually describe it. When you're describing the award, be very careful to describe it as in a way that somebody could easily appreciate the significance of that award, because you want them to know exactly how you distinguished yourself. Hobbies are still there for the ERAS application. Last year, they were one of 10 experiences you could list. This year, I'm glad to see that they have their own section. That way we can not use up one of your 10 experiences in hobbies. Your ERAS application, as we said, you can list 10 experiences and you can categorize that into different types. They can categorize into work, research, volunteer, education, military, other extracurricular activities, professional, and teaching and mentoring. Now, what I would recommend that all of you do right now is take a piece of paper when you have a moment and write down every experience you have. Be inclusive, do not be selective. You can start with your CV and write down everything, but think about what you haven't put in your CV. So you might, through this process, come up with 20 experiences, right? Going back to college, med school, maybe you did a residency in your home country. Maybe there's 20 experiences. Well, of course, you can't put all 20 in the ERAS application. You might be able to get more than 10 in there if you consolidate some of them, but you'll at least be able to see what you have. And then you can start making some decisions on which ones to include and how to consolidate some of them so that you can get those that are more than 10 into your application. Now, some of you might, through this process, realize that you have 7 or 8 experiences. Maybe you don't have 10. And that's something notable to be aware of here on June 5th or so, because we still have almost 4 months before we have to turn in our application. So if we're sitting here at 7 to 8 experiences, we have a chance to be very strategic in the next 3 to 4 months and possibly get involved in 1, 2, maybe even 3 experiences. And now we can turn the 7 to 8 into maybe 9 or 10. And since many applicants will have 9 or 10 experiences, we would love to have something similar to that. Okay, so this is where knowing what you have right now allows us to be strategic and implement some actions to strengthen this part of our application if we're lacking in the numbers of experiences. Doing this also gives you some insight into what the strengths of your profile are and how you can target your profile to strengthen it. Experiences can be linked to different focus areas. So these are a long list of focus areas. So you have to link each experience to one of these focus areas. And experiences are linked to key characteristics. So these are the key characteristics that you have at your disposal. So you want to think about what your involvement in that experience has been and how it's highlighted certain characteristics or attributes. Now it's time to address your questions. So we'll go through them one at a time. So the first question I want to address has to do with things to do from now until September. What should we be doing starting from now, leading up to September to prepare for the match season? What should be our target checklist for each month? So I feel very confident that we addressed this in good detail to this point. If you follow along with us in our monthly webinars, I will point out what needs to be done in every month. Another question related to timeline: when should I start preparing various components of my application? Again, we've covered some of those aspects already. With your AirAS application, start working on it now. Just do a little bit at a time. Again, you're probably very busy, again, with step exams, with US clinical experience, but you can spend a little bit of time, 15, 20 minutes a day, 30 minutes, maybe you have an hour, you'll make quite a bit of progress. And starting now allows you to put your application to the side, and you come back to it a week later and you have a very fresh perspective. So I think there's a lot of benefit to doing a little bit over the next 2-3 months. We already talked about letters of recommendation. Next month, we're going to talk about personal statement. You can also get started on your personal statement. In the Successful Match book, there's a 50-page chapter on the personal statement. It tells you all about what programs are looking for in the personal statement. It gives you examples of some very well-regarded personal statements. So I think you'll find a lot of information there. We had a question about contacting programs. Can you provide guidance on how to approach contacting program directors or residents for more information? So now this really depends on what you're trying to get from these programs. So every contact you have, every point of communication you have between you and the program is a time where you're going to be evaluated in some way. It's an impression that you're making. So you'd rather not ask any questions that are easily found in research. This is where your research is crucial, because if you're asking questions that are available on their website, on Residency Explorer, and you ask that question, they may really wonder about how much effort you're putting into their program. So you want to be very knowledgeable before you approach a program asking for information. If something's not there, then by all means, ask them. Now, it all depends, of course, on what information you're looking for. I think some requests may be difficult to honor. For example, if you are looking for an observership and the institutional policy is that they don't offer observerships, and you contact the program director for that, you may not get what you want. Okay, so I think, again, knowing whether that's even a possibility is helpful in whether you want to even frame that question to a program director. Residents can be approached. One thing that you want to keep in mind is that both groups, program directors and residents, are incredibly busy, so their response time may not be very fast. My program director at Baylor gets about 200 emails a day. So it's very hard for our program director to respond to all of those. So I think that's one thing to keep in mind. Also keep in mind that emails aren't always received. So when people email me at my Baylor institutional email address, a lot of times the emails go into the junk folder. Now, if the recipient isn't in the habit of looking at the junk folder, they may not appreciate your email or may realize that it's there 2 weeks later. So there's a lot of challenges with reaching out to program directors. Program directors have difficult jobs. So right now, they're getting ready for the new interns. And so the months of June, July, August are very difficult months to get a hold of program directors, just because new interns are starting and first-year residents are transitioning into being second years, and second years are transitioning to being third years. So it's a tough time for program directors. But again, if you have some specific information you're seeking that's not easily available, then by all means, you can reach out to the program to ask that question, or to residents. How important are connections? So connections, I will say that connections are another way of saying your network. So they are very important. I'm a big believer that networking is essential for every applicant type, not just IMGs, but both USMDs and USDOs. And the reason why it's important is that every year, each program receives record-breaking numbers of applications. The number of applications submitted per applicant is climbing, has been climbing for years and years. And when programs set these records, the application volume is overwhelming to these programs. Ideally, they want to look through each application very carefully so that they can assess your fit and potential for success in their program and invite you for an interview. But with the explosion of applications at each program, it becomes very difficult for these programs to do what they need to do. And therefore, when someone that the program knows puts in a word for you, that allows them to take a more closer look at your application. It achieves several different things. Number one, somebody that they know is saying something positive about you. That's very, very meaningful. Number two, it also shows them that there's a level of interest that you have in their program. Your perceived interest in a program has always been an important criteria to residency programs. In a recent NRMP survey, about 70 to 75% of internal medicine programs, if we use IM as an example, indicated that your perceived interest in the program is a factor when making interview decisions. So connections are important, and they're well worth investing some time into building your network. Now, the next question is how to network effectively when you have no personal connections. So what I want all of you to do is take out another piece of paper when you have a chance and write down everybody that you know in the United States. This can be family, this can be friends, this can be seniors from your medical college, this can be nurses you know here, this can be preceptors that you've worked with, this could be anybody. Don't be selective, write down every single person that you know, okay? Now guess what? Most of the people on your list know a doctor, at least one doctor. How do I know that? Because most of those people have a doctor that they go to see when they're not feeling well, all right? Now, chances are they know more than one doctor, okay? So networking is all about moving from one person to another to acquire information. And the hope is, over time, as you meet new people, you develop stronger relationships that come October, that some of these members of your network would be willing to put in a word for you with the program. And that can and will happen if you make networking a priority. In the United States, networking is a very commonly accepted practice in many areas, not just medicine. Now, in most of the world, networking is not something that's typically done. Even among US medical students, very few have experienced networking. So when we talk about networking to all applicant types, there's quite a bit of hesitation associated with this whole concept because it's something very foreign to almost everybody. But the way to look at it is that every single physician in the US, including myself, none of us got to where we are today without people being in our corner. Okay, we had to benefit from the guidance, mentorship, advice of those who had walked in the shoes that we want to travel in before us. So with that being said, a lot of those people want to give back to the next generation. You are the next generation. So if you look at it that way, you will look at it in a way that you don't feel like you're imposing on somebody. Okay? People have a big heart for this. Does everybody have a big heart for this? No. But if you knock on a lot of doors, you're going to get some people that have a big heart for this, and that has the potential to change your life. Okay? To give you an example of that, I was invited to speak on a panel at a medical conference, and they wanted me to address mentoring and how to find mentors and networking. And I spoke about the same things that I'm speaking to you today. And at the end of our panel discussion, we invited people in the audience to share their stories or ask questions. And we had a very well-established gastroenterologist who got up. And he was 25 years into his career here in the US, but he was from another country. And when he came here, he had a hard time getting established, but he did some networking. And through that effort, he met a few key people, one of which gave him some opportunities and also advocated for him at a program. He didn't get very many interviews at the time for a variety of reasons, but because of the networking and the way he put his application together and his interview prep, he was able to make an impression on those programs, and he matched. Now, 25 years later, he's the chairman of gastroenterology at a major hospital. So he was standing up to share his story because he wanted to highlight the importance of networking and mentorship in his career. So these people are out there, and you just have to knock on a lot of doors. And if you do, you start collecting quite a bit of network that will ultimately help you. Now, when you reach out to these people, your initial request should not be anything big. You don't ask them for an observership. You don't ask them for a research opportunity. You don't ask them for anything major. Because most people, if you ask them for something major and they don't know you, they will shut down. Okay. The best thing to do when you're networking.
Hey, Dr. Desai.
Yes.
Hey, we just got a comment saying that you're currently muted. So I can hear you on my end. So maybe try muting yourself and then trying again.
Can we ask the rest of the community here if they can't hear me?
Is anybody else having issues hearing Dr. Desai or myself? Please let us know. Okay, yeah, it looks like everybody else can hear you. So whoever's having that problem, maybe I would try leaving and joining again. Just it might be a network issue or something like that. So sorry to interrupt.
No, no problem, Alyssa. Thank you for sharing that with me. Hopefully our rotator who's having trouble, that we're able to resolve that here soon. But getting back to networking, when you first make contact with someone, don't ask for anything too big. Just ask for a little bit of their time because you're trying to understand something or learn something about maybe a particular program that they had graduated from, or maybe that they are a current resident at. You just have to get your foot in the door. When you ask for something small, you get your foot in the door, and then you start your relationship. Then they get to talk to you. They get to tell you about themselves. They get to hear about you. And now you're starting, hopefully, what's going to be a beautiful new relationship. So start that way. And then once you establish a relationship, they start to like you and you build it over time. That's when new opportunities will present themselves. And that's when people over time may be willing to put in a word for you. We had questions about extracurricular activities. The question wasn't entirely clear. The person wrote research and volunteering experiences and residency applications. I'm not sure what aspect of this the questioner was asking about, but yes, you can list your research and volunteer experience in the residency application. And as I said before, you can take stock of what you've done in these areas now, so that if you need to bolster these areas, you can do so in the next 3 to 4 months. If somebody has something more specific related to this, When we talk one-on-one, I'm happy to address this. Somebody asked about step 3 scores. How much does step 3 help? Right now, it's a difficult question to answer because we're still in what we call a bit of a transition phase. So we've moved obviously from step 1 going going from numerical scoring to pass fail. And with that, the importance of step 2 has increased. And when this was happening, we did survey program directors in different fields, asking them, how will your residency selection practices change when step 1 goes pass fail? And there was a small percentage of programs that did indicate that they might look more at the step 3, but the response rate of these surveys was on the lower end. There were not that many programs that responded to this survey. So it's hard to know just how important it is. There are some anecdotal reports of program directors mentioning that they like to see the step 3 either before you apply or after you apply, and hopefully before they make their rank list. But the traditional advice has been with regards to step 3 is that applicants with low step scores should really consider taking step 3, because having a passing score can really provide a boost to your application and reassure programs that there won't be a problem in the future with step 3. And then of course, people who are interested in an H-1B visa, taking the step 3 would be important for that group. What are the most important things in your application? So you'll hear me say that everything is important, but if you want me to tell you what's most important, letters of recommendation, as I said, are the second most important criteria, incredibly important, gaining more importance every year. Also important are your ERAS descriptions that we talked about before. Those need to be carefully cultivated and crafted. There's a section on your ERAS application called the impactful experience, where you can talk about any hardships or obstacles you've had to overcome. That section of the application, if it's pertinent to you, is important. Not everybody has to complete that section of the application, but if you have a hardship or obstacle you face and they give you examples of what those might be on the ERAS instruction manual, that's a section that you want to definitely tackle. Your personal statement is important. It can be important at different phases of the application. Some programs, as they move to a more holistic review, are really looking at the personal statement as they make interview decisions. Other programs rely on it more heavily once you get into the interview phase, but the personal statement, regardless, is very, very important. Your experience in the United States, your US clinical experience, is quite important. They want to know that you have the relevant experience, that you're doing the things that you'll be expected to do as a resident, that you're familiar with the healthcare system, that you're aware of the roles and responsibilities of the different healthcare professionals you'll be working hand in hand with. So a lot of these things are important. Everything is important, but these are among the more important things. I'm not sure what this question was about because it wasn't phrased as a question. It just said ERAS application focus. So whoever wrote this is welcome to just text me or talk to me about any concerns related to this question. We started getting some questions actually about the residency interview, even though we're 4 months away from the interview. So as I mentioned before, in terms of preparing for residency interview, there are 150 plus pages of residency interview prep in the Successful Match book. And on the Successful Match website, in our blog, there are many, many articles on the residency interview. So check those out. On that same website, there are videos of before and after answers. So we show you examples of what a typical average type answer is. And we show you an example of an after answer when you've utilized certain strategies and you've been able to transform your answer into something that's particularly compelling. So you can see what the difference is between before and after answer. There's also a podcast on the Successful Match website called Success in Medicine, where I actually devote podcast episodes to certain residency interview questions. If you're interested to see how I would answer a question, do take a listen to those podcast episodes. Somebody asked, what are some of the most unique residency interview questions that you have come across? So one article that I will point you to on our blog is called the 275 Most Common Interview Questions. It has a lot of different interview questions, some of which are quite unique. Examples of unique questions would be things like, if you had to pick one superpower to have, what would it be? If you could be any animal in the world, what animal would you be? If you were stranded on an island, what are 3 things you would like to have with you? So if you're talking about unique, these are types of unique interview questions. The good news is that these are not terribly common. And if they're unique and challenging, that means everybody is, for the most part, going to find them unique and challenging. And so part of answering these types of interview questions is to be aware that even with extensive prep, you may be asked something that you're not ready for. But if you've prepared extensively, the chances of you being asked something that you're not prepared for goes down considerably. And you'll also have strategies in place with the resources that we have to handle these types of questions, like what to do when you don't know the answer to a question immediately. So we have some strategies in place in the Successful Matchbook and our blog. And we're going to be spending more time on the residency interview in the coming months. As we move into September, October, November, we will devote the entire webinar to residency interview questions. And I'm happy to actually answer some of these types of questions to give you examples when we get to that point. I think, we've gone a little bit past our hour, so I don't know that we have time to do other questions, but again, I'm going to be talking to every single one of you. And even if I've talked to you, I always love to keep up with you and hear about how you're doing. So we can always talk again as you have questions related to the residency match. So don't hesitate to reach out to me directly. You'll all have my personal line. You can just reach out to me when you have questions. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and hand it over to Alyssa.
All right. So I can go ahead and close us off for the night. One thing I did want to mention before ending is we do have a free tool on our website that we call our IMG-friendly residency programs tool. So I'm going to go ahead and share that real quick with you guys so that you can kind of see what it looks like. So can you all see my screen?
So it's probably a lag time. There it is. It's come up now.
Okay, great. So if you guys go to our website, you'll see under this U.S. Clinical Experience tab, we have our IMG-friendly residency programs. And basically the way that this works is you can choose by state and by specialty, and these both work simultaneously. So for example, I'm in Michigan, so I'll just choose Michigan. And you'll see that all of the programs will show up by various specialty. So let's say, for example, you're interested in internal medicine. You click the search bar and it'll pull up all of the residency programs for internal medicine in Michigan. And that also includes various information such as the program name, the percentage of IMGs in their program, and some requirements that they have, maybe like USMLE step scores here, if they require any clinical experience, and then the link to the specific program website is linked there as well. So I just wanted to make you guys aware of that. It is a very useful tool, and it is free. I know somebody said in the chat that they were looking for another way that's not going through residency program websites. So that is one way. However, I do think it's important to still go through the program website, as that typically has the most accurate data. And then another thing is, another tool that you can use is Residency Explorer. There's some additional information on there, such as the specific percentage of residents by medical student type. So you can look at how many percentage of IMGs, US IMGs, Caribbean IMGs. That's kind of something that you can look at there, as well as salary and leave there. So those are some important tools that you can use when you're searching for residency programs. So definitely consider that as part of your research. Those are two very easy tools to use just for basic research. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and close us off for the night. So thank you all for joining us, and we're very glad to have you tonight. We hope that we were able to answer most of your questions. If we didn't get to any of your questions that you had in the chat, please feel free to send them in the Google form for next time, as we would love to answer all of your questions. If there's anything specific that you want to discuss with us or anything private that you'd like to just discuss individually, please feel free to reach out to any one of us on our team, including Dr. Desai. We want to help you, and we want to make sure that you're making the best decisions for yourself that you can. And if you need guidance, we're here for anything, whether it be about the residency match or just life in general. We do want to watch you guys succeed, and we want to help you whenever we can. So please do not hesitate. We're all here for you in that sense, and we just want to be a part of that with you. So with that said, I will go ahead and pass it off to you, Dr. Desai.
All right. Thank you, Alyssa. And again, I want to thank all of you for attending our webinar tonight. We will be doing this again in July. In July, we will focus the webinar on the personal statements. I hope that all of you can join us then. In the meantime, if you need anything else at all, as Alyssa said, just reach out to us. Don't hesitate. Remember, as rotators in our program, we strongly believe in supporting you as much as we can. So it's not just about doing a rotation, it's being there for you every step of the way, and we are here for you. So reach out if you need anything, and until next time, we will wish you a good night.
All right, everybody for joining, and hope you have a great night as well.